Okay, this session is designed for people who are using Evolve for pretty much the very first time. It involves a little bit of personalization and configuration of the system so that it looks how you want it to look and contains the information that you want to contain. And mostly it's about getting the most out of your initial experience. Every single user should do this process and should try and follow these steps. It will result in a much better experience of Evolve. First thing we want to do is we want to edit an individual's dashboard. So before you click on anything, before you do anything, visit Personal Preferences, Dashboard Preferences, and I would expect at the first instance for you to uncheck absolutely everything except these last three at the bottom, which say automatically update tasks, remember last view, and show dashboard background. Check them all, make sure they're checked to the positive, choose go, and your system is ready to be configured. It will be likely that prior, on your first login to Evolve, you wouldn't see a logo, but it's plausible that your systems admin should have added it or could have added it. So therefore, we're going to show it present on this dashboard. Next, we need to understand the dashboard. Now, what we see on our dashboard view of Evolve will be dictated and modified by what it is that we do in the business. To cite you an example, there are a number of variables on this front page which are specific to the role. The first of which is this time slice detailed here. Now I'm sure everybody knows that we're working today, and I suspect that your system will be defaulting to today. But what you'll find is that every time you look at the information, you want to actually see a certain time frame represented. To give you a couple of recommendations, if you're working in the temp marketplace, this week tends to be a good point of call because it will tell you what you've got to be done this week, or the last 7 days will tell you what you've done in the last 7 days. This requirement will vary dependent on your role within the business. For a permanent recruiter, which is what I'm going to use for this illustration, the correct frequency is last 1 month. What we're doing with this variable is we're setting the time frame for the information displayed on your home page. So as you can appreciate, for a permanent recruiter, they stand or fall by the last month. The shorter terms, perhaps this week, would be much more relevant to a temp marketplace. The second thing to understand is what it is we want to show on our dashboard. Now, the joy of a dashboard widget, you can see me illustrating them on the screen, is that they're very easy to switch on and they're very, very easy to switch off. But the system will remember what you include on your dashboard and therefore will present it to you for the rest of the time you're using Evolve. It can be changed. It's very simple to change, as easy as the illustration I just did. But the reality is that most people settle on the dashboard and will become familiar with it. Now, taking in mind my permanent recruiter, I'm going to actually work the process backwards. So I'm going to start by adding permanent placements to my front screen. And you'll see as soon as I add that function, I get a widget which resembles permanent placement starting. The thing that the person did prior to getting a placement would be likely to have been an interview. So I'm going to choose interviews. And in reverse chronological order, I'm going to also choose CV sent. And I'm going to choose current requirements. This gives me a summary of what requirements I have to work with as a recruitment consultant and the steps I'm taking along the path to achieving what is ultimately a placement. I want to add 2 more tabs because it's my own preferred environment. I like to add tasks because I use the system to generate callbacks, and I also like to add activities, which are my personal KPIs. Now you'll notice that they added in the progressively up the screen, so the last thing I added is at the top of the screen. Should you get them in the wrong order, it's very straightforward. You can just grab the header of the widget and you can drag it to a different position on the screen. You notice in that case I just moved tasks to the top, and the same is true of any widget in order to get it to take the shape is correct for you. Okay, so that gives us how to format the dashboard. We're going to move on now to what other things we can format on a personal level. And again, we're going to look at personal preferences. And in this case, we're going to choose Edit Preferences, which is our 3rd menu item. Hopefully, most of this is self-explanatory, but it is something that people need to be shown often because it's useful for the usability of the system. I'd immediately draw your attention to about halfway down the system where we've got that it starts with the line Client tab, and you can actually see that on an Evolve record there are various bits of information that are available, and that information is organised according to tabs. It's important that the tab you use most often is the one that your system opens by default, because if you click into a candidate record and the first thing you're doing every single time is clicking through to view their CV, then your default is set incorrectly. This can be done for every type of record that exists within the system. I'm going to leave my client on contacts. Mine are actually configured correctly. My illustration on the candidate is to go with CV. A couple of other things that are relevant whilst we're here. Sticky tabs means that if you are within a set of records, for example, running through a list or working through a list, and you're assessing them based upon the Details tab, a tab that isn't your default tab, the system can remember to present you with that tab by default, and that's often useful. Personally, I have mine stuck on. And the last thing that I'm going to worry about in this one is that here under number of results for searches, we have a number. Now, you need to consider what is the most relevant number of records you want returned when you perform a search. I'd hazard a guess that it isn't the same size as your entire database, because that defeats the object. The other thing that this will impact is loading time for the page, and consequently how long the user spends waiting for results. And I think that gets us to a stage whereby we can understand how to initially configure our system to work for us. Just a quick sample of each of the screens, or an example of a screen. If I were to navigate to a candidate record and open it, we would want to see the CV tab by default. You can see my system defaults to showing me the CV tab. I can always access other parts of the system, but it's where do I want to start that's the most relevant. I'm just going to leave this page and conclude this this particular demonstration, leaving it on my preference page, so that if it's important to you, you can pause it here and work out what it is that we recommend as the settings for this part of the system. Thank you very much.